And President Biden's red line when it comes to Russia's potential use of chemical weapons comes as an increasing number of Americans grow worried about the future of chemical warfare. In an exclusive NewsNation poll out this week, it shows that 91% of Americans are concerned about the use of chemical weapons in upcoming conflicts. Additionally, a solid 59% say they think U.S. sanctions on Russia have so far been too weak. I want to welcome now retired Lieutenant General Richard Newton. He has a 34-year military career, and it includes serving as the U.S. Air Force Assistant Vice Chief of Staff. Lieutenant General, good morning. Thank you for joining us as always. And let's begin with that reporting that Allison just had with President Biden's promise that Russia's use of chemical weapons in Ukraine would trigger a response in kind. That is his quote. What does that mean?
Well, good morning, Ruta Bay. Again, I think the president's in the midst of a very successful trip to both the NATO summit, but also the European Union and the G7. He's on his way right now, literally as we speak, to Poland. But he's made it very clear that NATO remains very strongly unified. In fact, the strongest I've seen NATO unified, certainly in my career, even in my lifetime for that matter. But what he's talking about in terms of these red lines, should Putin decide to cross over that red line using weapons of mass destruction, such as chemical weapons and so forth, that he will be met with a very staunch reply from NATO. He made that very clear and warned Putin not to cross that red line. He did not go into details, nor would I expect him to go into details what that would mean. But right now, there are 100,000 U.S. troops on the European continent, along with several other 100,000s of NATO forces as well. So it's a very capable, very staunch, and very responsive force that would be met with Putin deciding to cross that line.
And, you know, this conflict is reminiscent of Syria in many ways. And we remember then President Obama in 2013, he threatened President Assad with the red line regarding his use of chemical weapons in Syria, but then he failed to back it up. What do you think happens here? Is President Biden at risk of doing the same? I mean, what else can he do? The no-fly zone is a no-go.
Well, I believe he needs to be very, very strong in terms of both his pronouncements, but also in keeping NATO unified, as well as, again, putting the most capable forces we possibly can deployed to Europe. And that's what's happening right now. We're also arming up our especially on the eastern front of Europe, as you draw a line from the Baltics down to Romania and Bulgaria with, chemical weapons defense capabilities and so forth. But I believe that the president, again, needs to be consistent. He needs to be strong in his strategic communication back to Putin that is indeed a red line, and actually show the capabilities that we have on the continent, and that we will indeed respond.
And you heard in our poll, Americans don't think the U.S. is being strong enough with Vladimir Putin. Do you agree? And we've talked before about alternatives and the lack of basically tenable options short of engaging in direct military conflict.
Yeah, my concern leading up to this point is that we need to remember, Ruta Bay, that, and remind the world that we are the world's leading superpower with the most capable military. And that we will fight and defend, not only for our national security, but also in this case with NATO. As you and I have discussed in previous opportunities, is that an attack on NATO, one country is an attack on the entire NATO forces. We need to make sure that the president, again, looks at this as a winning strategy versus one as a defensive strategy. Right now, what we're seeing in the battlefield, literally, is Russia and Putin. They're dug in, they're behind their timeline and so forth. And there's actually momentum swinging towards President Zelensky and the Ukrainian military. It's amazing. In fact, it's astounding to me. And therefore, we need to be providing them all the capabilities we possibly can, short of a no-fly zone. But I would advocate for MiG-29s, for anti-air defenses beyond just Stingers, which go up to about 10,000 feet. But now with the S-300 surface air missile capabilities and so forth. But this is a time for us not to waver. It's not a time for us to have any sense of weakness at all displayed to Putin, because he'll smell that out in a heartbeat. We need to be strong, especially coming out of this very strong NATO summit, and present to him the capabilities that we have, and that, frankly, moving forward, we now mean business.
All right, Lieutenant General Newton, thank you as always for waking up with us this morning.
Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to click on the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.